Well, good evening, friends. It is time once again for the UnkleToddCast. Good to see all of you. Appreciate you tuning in. This is a little bit of a shakedown flight. I am experimenting with some new tech, which I seem to do every week. But I'm hoping this will give me the ability to work on some different platforms. This has me on Twitter and YouTube, and I'm trying to see if there's a way to get us on all three simultaneously. We'll see how that goes, but at any rate, there's a chat function on here which I think is supposed to be able to allow me to get comments from everybody at the same time, so we'll see how that works. Like I say, this is a complete experiment. I have no idea if it's going to work out or not, so we'll see how it all goes. But hadn't talked to you guys for a while. I had intended to get on here after the Chiefs had hired Steve Spagnuolo as their new defensive coordinator. As many of you pointed out, I was not 100% confident that Andy Reid would fire Bob Sutton for a myriad of reasons, which I listed off for you, not the least of which was the guy has overseen some massive defensive flameouts and yet kept his job for 5 years. It's mind-boggling to me, to be honest. But the philosophy that I have in most of these endeavors is I'm not in all the meetings. I don't see all the spreadsheets. I don't know all the analytics. I don't know all the nuts and bolts. So, things happen. Information is not often shared with the general public. So it's a little hard for me to know exactly, what all was said, what all was done. So all indications are that the Chiefs thought that they were going to have 2 years basically to get ready for Patrick Mahomes. And all indications are that essentially the Chiefs' offense got up to speed so stupidly fast that the front office was left scrambling a little bit to try to figure out how in the world they were going to get the other half of the ball, ready to complement the offense. And that's incredibly hard to do on the fly. So, basically what you're left with is the conclusion that, they were trying to patch it together. Had they been able to make a trade for Earl Thomas, the safety from the Seahawks, maybe it looks much different. If they're able to, get Eric Berry diagnosed sooner and get him back on the field, who knows if they could have gotten Bob Sutton to make the adjustments that, as best we can tell, Andy Reid forced Bob Sutton to make, switching out for younger players, simplifying the scheme. Maybe things go differently. Hard to say. We don't know. The Chiefs were still the number one seed. They still were within one overtime drive of going to the Super Bowl. It's hard for me to get terribly exercised over that. Now, about Spagnuolo. Saw a lot of people saying, why are we going to do that? He's so similar to a, scheme devised by Bob Sutton. Is it really an upgrade? Well, yes, it is an upgrade, not the least of which is because, it's a different voice. A lot of indications are that the team more or less wasn't really listening to Bob Sutton. So, all indications are that, the team just benefited from a different voice. That's probably the simplest way to put it. A guy says the same thing over and over and over again. It gets a little stale. I've read a lot of guys who played for Marty Schottenheimer say towards the end of his time, his message started to get a little stale. So, I think you basically are in this position of you had the 31st ranked defense. Could you really do any worse? So there are theories flying around out there that the Chiefs were basically drafting players for Spagnuolo's system. Now, real quick, I know a lot of you are not necessarily football aficionados, so there's going to be a ton of terminology thrown around, and something you're going to hear a lot of is the Chiefs transitioning from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Now, for those of you who are uninitiated to the ways of football, here's what that means. You've got an offense. So the offense has a center who grabs hold of the football and snaps it between his legs to the quarterback. You have guards, and you have offensive tackles. And there are 4 that line up on what's known as the line of scrimmage. So that's the offense. The quarterback lines up, behind the center, either up close or what they call the shotgun, which is he's like 3 steps behind the center. And the center has to snap it a little farther. And in theory, that gives the quarterback more time, and, he doesn't have to spend so much energy and time what's called dropping back, which is basically he just takes, a few steps behind the line of scrimmage and starts looking for receivers. And, this all happens very quickly. But so that's the offense. The defense lines up and in a 3-4. Now, the Chiefs have typically been running a base defense, and again, that's a fancy way of saying that a majority of snaps, the Chiefs will be lined up in a 3-4. What that means is you have 3 people who are lined up on the line of scrimmage, 3 defenders, who are lined up on the line of scrimmage, and their job is to try to get past the offensive line guys to get to the quarterback, or to stop a runner who is going to come through or around the line of scrimmage on the offensive side to run the ball. There's a couple different schools of thought in this. The 3-4 is the school of thought of, we're not going to stop anybody at the line of scrimmage. We're not fast enough or big enough or whatever to, defend well up close to the line of scrimmage. So a 3-4, you're basically sending as many people as you can into what's called coverage. And all coverage is you're either defending a zone of the field, meaning if anybody runs at me or if I see a receiver in my area, it's my job to take care of that guy. Or you're on a specific receiver. So whatever that receiver does, you're going to respond in kind. That's a 3-4. Now, the advantage to a 3-4 is you can have a lot of guys in coverage. And so if you have good safeties, if you have good cornerbacks, if you have good linebackers, this is considered to be the way to roll, because, essentially you're almost surrendering or ceding the line of scrimmage. Old school is, the thinking is you win or lose at the line of scrimmage. So that's a 3-4. Now, they're saying that because of Spagnuolo and because of the players that the Chiefs currently have, that they would be served well to move to a 4-3. Now, a 4-3, I told you that there are these, 4 guys on the line of scrimmage for the offense. 4-3 means in, your quote-unquote base package, where you typically start from, you line up 4 people who each is basically assigned to the person right across from them. They will constantly be trying to penetrate the line of scrimmage to get to the quarterback or to stop a runner. And, it's very hard for you to mess up your assignment, the person who you're supposed to take care of. So if you have big, physical, defensive linemen, you're typically served better by playing a 4-3. Now, the big difference between a 4-3 and a 3-4 is you have one less person that you can have, quote-unquote, in coverage if you're playing a 4-3, because you've now assigned a defender to the line of scrimmage. The advantages to a 4-3 is you're typically better defending the run, because it's harder for someone to, what's called shooting a gap, which is basically, the offensive tackle, the offensive guard, the center. They're trying to create a little opening where the runner can get through. So looking at the Chiefs personnel today, the conventional wisdom is that the Chiefs would be better served switching to a 4-3 as their quote-unquote base package. Now, understand, a lot of this is largely academic because there are so many formations, and good defensive coordinators typically try to adjust on the fly. They see what the other team is doing, and they make in-game adjustments to, combat whatever it is the other team is doing. For example, in the championship game, you saw Andy Reid quickly shift what he was doing on the offense in the second possession for the Chiefs' offense. You didn't really see the defense make adjustments typically until halftime. And even then, it wasn't often a radical adjustment. It was just an adjustment. So, like I say, I think the biggest deal is just you got a different voice in the room. And I think that's, that's the biggest gain that you have. But Spagnuolo typically has been a much more aggressive coordinator. He blitzes more. He tends to, give a lot more what you'd call setting the edge, which that just means you can't let a guy shoot out and run down the sideline because everybody's bunched up in the middle. So, you typically have a defender of some stripe near the sidelines so they can't set that up. Like I say, this is all just a ginormous house of cards where if everything goes right, you have a great defense. Or if you successfully diagnose what the other team is doing, or if you're able to make quick adjustments, you're sort of quick on your feet, fleet of foot, if you will, you're able to, combat those things. So I'd have to say, it's bound to be good. Some local radio guys have gone through and cataloged the championship teams of the last several years, and without fail, they have a top 10 to a top 15 defense. Very few of them were like top 5. So, you have to play some form of what's typically referred to as complementary football, which just means, you're good in all three phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. What often tends to happen is teams that are exceptional in one of those phases, there's a drop-off in another phase. So, teams that have a really good defense maybe are not so good on offense. Teams that are really good on offense tend to not have such great special teams. It's very hard to construct a roster where you're just exceptional all the way around. It's pretty rare that it happens. So a lot of the championship teams, they would have one phase that was really good, another phase that was pretty good, and a third phase that was average or above. So, that's typically how it all shakes out. So, at any rate, that just seems to be the way it rolls. So, not seeing comments in here, so this is earlier than I'm usually on here. I heard a lot of people comment on the fact that by the time I would get on here, it was time for them to go to bed. So, did my best to kind of see if we can combat that a little bit. Really what it is I'm a bachelor this evening for a little while, so I kind of wanted to check out the tech and see if anybody, was chatting or anything, then I could test out this. I'm using a piece of tech that supposedly allows me to stream to several platforms at one time. So I honestly just wanted to see how well that worked. So, that's the name of that tune, as they say. So supposedly right now I am on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube all at the same time. I have no idea if that's the case. Like I say, this is just kind of a shakedown flight. So let me get myself a drink, and we'll be back in just a moment.
You're listening to the #1 Kansas City sports talk show.
I have kind of a fill light coming from in front of me so that we don't get Funky Shadows.
That's recorded in a garage.
I saw Funky Shadows open at the Mosh Pit. Just fantastic acoustic set.
You're listening to the UnkleToddCast.
So, more than anything right now, I feel like we're kind of zeroing in on this next off season in terms of free agents that can be signed and guys that can be drafted for the Chiefs. So, you know, it's so hard for me because, hey, thanks, Greg. That's a Facebook comment I didn't see. Did that pop up on my Doomaflachi? Let's see, read only. And oh, you know what? This is just for me to send messages. You know, it's always been hilarious to me that an awful lot of my opportunities in ministry have begun just from being the guy who would dive in and try to work out the technology of things. And in my own personal life, like, I am such a wreck when it comes to technology, and this kind of stuff is just kind of like, oh my goodness. So, yeah, really what this does is it allows me to send text messages to any of these platforms. But you sent me a message, and I'm not sure. You know what? I don't think I have this set up correctly because I'm supposed to put this in a web browser. This is fascinating radio, guys, I know, so forgive me. Like I say, this is largely a shakedown flight. Just trying to see if any of this works at all. No, it's the same way. Okay. So I'm not real sure how I'm supposed to read these without... I mean, I have all these screens and I have all these windows open, so, you know, I could see your comment anyway. It's not like I couldn't, but I think this is supposed to save me from having to, like, have several different devices going and whatever. I have no idea, but we'll see. So, yeah. Good times. And I mean, this is supposed to give me analytics, which I guess is kind of fun, where I'm supposed to be able to see, you know, last session, last week. I think this might just be chat settings. Back to chat. There we go. Okay. We'll see. Yada, yada, yada. So there you go. Whoops. All right. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Okay. So, there's a comment. Fantastic. Thank you for that. I'm going to like your comment because it's very helpful. And I've also systematically figured out that I did not have these things on mute. So, good times. Good times. I've got, you know, I'm trying all these different things, and it's kind of silly because... you know, I'm getting a lot of different advice from people who are trying to encourage me, and I really do appreciate that. It's just sometimes I feel like I get kind of conflicting direction from folks, and it's kind of hard for me to see, you know, the best way to go. So, but like I say, I'm grateful. Folks are incredibly well-intentioned, and I really appreciate it. So, well, Craig, right now, I literally think it's just you and me, if the analytics are to be believed, and I don't know why I wouldn't believe them. So, yeah. I mean, that was literally all I had in my head right this minute. I guess I was going to talk about the Royals a little bit, because I see people talking about Whit Merrifield like this means that Whit will not be traded in the next 4 years. I hope he isn't. I hope he wasn't before, but actually I think the 4-year contract, which isn't that surprising, we kind of made it out like we were shocked, I guess, because there was all this possible talk of Whit being traded, which wasn't coming from the Royals, by the way. I feel like they've consistently talked like he was going to be here, but you know, just from the general public of, oh, this means he's a lifer. Well, the thing is now he becomes a very attractive trade piece because he's under club control at a pretty affordable price for the foreseeable future. So, you know, I don't think he'll be traded unless the team just absolutely goes into the dumpster. Most of what I've read, you know, they're expecting the Royals to win, you know, 69 to 75 games this year, which isn't great. It's an improvement from last year. You know, you add 10 wins every season, and 2-3 years you're back into contention, so that's awesome. But you do what you can with what you have to work with, I suppose. So hang on here, let me get back to my home page. Back to the home page. There we go. Yep. Okay, little thumbnail. I don't know about you guys. Yeah, there you go, Craig. Bingo. You and I are right on the same page, brother. So, well, and what I started to say before I get sidetracked myself there is, this isn't that unusual for Dayton Moore because he likes to buy out arbitration years for players, and that's essentially what this is. It guarantees Witt some money, and you're betting on him getting better. And if he, turns into a superstar, well, now you've got him fairly cheap for what you're getting. But yeah, if somebody offers you a good deal, you have to take it. And yeah, as we have discussed on here, Craig, honestly, if it helps the team and we could get 2 or 3 good prospects for him, would be better for us long term. Well, and again, I think that's what caused all the fire around, he's probably going to get traded. But if you look at Dayton Moore's track record and you look at the Royals' track record, no such thing as bad publicity. Craig, we did get a new dog and name him Whitley, though. That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to invoke Hosmer the dog, but I won't do that because he's no longer in our neighborhood. So, it's hard to it's hard to know, and I mean, it's one of these things. It's sort of like, the Chiefs offseason seems to revolve around, you got to re-sign Chris Jones, you got to re-sign Tyreek Hill, you got to re-sign Dee Ford, you got to re-sign, you got to restructure Justin Houston so you can keep him around, you got to restructure Eric Berry, et cetera, et cetera. There comes a point when it's, diminishing returns, and you almost have to just take your chances because you have, 3 years of Patrick Mahomes on his rookie deal. And you're almost better off, clearing out the salary cap so you can go out and get some proven guys and continue to draft and hope you get some more proven guys at a club-friendly price, so you can shoot your shot. With the Royals, it's all about Sully Mateus, and it's all about, Nick Prado, and it's all about Brady Singer, and it's very much like it was in 2011, 2012, where we're starting to see the draft picks develop. Whether or not the team returns to contention. I saw something today that was fascinating. The Royals had no top prospects listed in the major publications, Sporting News, Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus, this kind of thing, at second base or third base. But they had a ton of high prospects at first and catcher and pitching. So, the plan might be, okay, well, let's lock up second base. They've got Hunter Dozier. They've got Ryan O'Hearn. They've got Brian Goodwin. They've got Brett Phillips. They've got Alex Gordon for however much longer he is. What's the story with the rumors of a Mahomes contract that ESPN was reporting a week or so ago? Okay. Glad you asked, because here is a wonderful opportunity to discuss the narrative, capital T, capital N. There was no rumor that Mahomes was getting a contract. What happened was, and I have no idea who did this first, but someone ran a calculation based on the trends of young quarterbacks. So we're talking, Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, this kind of thing. Then they projected it a little farther, from looking back at, Tom Brady, these guys who had gotten signed, and then they literally just do an algebraic projection, and they're saying, oh, this is going to be, he's going to be the first $200 million man. I'm thinking Mahomes' agent was involved in this somehow too, of saying that, when he signed that $200 million contract. And ESPN, who you all know on here, there is no love lost between me and ESPN. I have nothing personally against them. They have not done any harm to me. I get so tired of them manufacturing a narrative, either because they have, a bazillion hours of programming to fill and they have nothing better to talk about, or they take a player who's good and to boost their own ratings, they turn him into, the greatest thing since sliced bread. Or recently they've been pushing a political agenda or a social agenda, and I'm like, that's great. You're a sports network, okay? Regardless of how relevant you think it is, there are other stations who are doing that, and they're doing it better than you, so stay in your lane. Again, I'm not telling anybody how to do their business. I'm just telling you, if you want customers, typically this is the path that you choose. But you know what? If you want to do that, more power to you. God bless America. We're a free and capitalist nation. Do whatever floats your boat. And, your stockholders and your customers will tell you whether or not you're doing a good job. We vote with our wallets. That's a cliche that's become a cliche for a good reason. So the story was basically just that, all things being equal, when it comes time, the Chiefs will probably have to spend $200 million to keep Patrick Mahomes. They can't do it right now. They won't do it right now. There's no reason to do it right now. They have him under club control for 3 more years. They could franchise tag him for another. They probably won't because it would be very expensive. Because the franchise tag, the number that is completely out of your control. It's the average of, other people at that position that sets the price. So that's my understanding anyway. I didn't do a ton of reading about it because it just had the stench of clickbait all over it. So, that's the thing that tends to kind of represent smoke to fire to me is the sources, because so often sources are lemmings off the cliff. But if you start seeing Adam Schefter, if you start seeing, John Heyman, if you start seeing, Benjamin Albright, if you start seeing certain people start reporting on these things, then there might be a little something to it, because those are people that tend to be plugged in. If you see, USA Today and then ESPN and then CBS Sports and then NFL Network, well, it's just, it's wag the dog. It's chasing their own tail. Typically, anyway. So, it was something to fill time when guys were sick of talking about the Super Bowl, is my guess. So, take that for what it's worth. All right. Ryan, how are you, man? So, I heard chatter today about the search for the new Bears kicker, and it just broke my heart. But, that stuff happens. So, anywho. Well, like I say, I may kind of take a break and come back later. We'll see. Because, like I say, I'm really just kind of looking at this to see, how did it work? Did it work? Was anybody interested outside of my friends and family? That kind of deal. Not bad, such a sweet setup. Well, it's taken shape, I think. Every week I try to do a little bit of work in here. This room was completely gutted, and new ceiling, new insulation, new paint, and I basically had to start over. Oh, new doors. My dad came over and helped me replace every interior door in this house, and trim, baseboard, shoe mold. My office is the only room in here with carpet. So there's new carpet in here, which a church friend, was very nice. He owns a place that does carpet, and he snagged me a remnant from a big job that he had to do. And he said, "Do you care what color it is?" I said, "Nope." And so he just gave me the carpet, and I just paid a couple of his guys to come install it. And even they did more work than was contracted, because they were very nice. And anytime anybody needs a recommendation on carpet, that is the place I send them to. And hardwood floors, they do that too. Anyway, So here we go. You know the sad thing, guys, is this isn't even all my stuff. You know, there's still Royal stuff and Chief stuff, and there's some instruments, and I think even an amplifier. No, I think I got all the amplifiers now. You can see them behind me. But I've still got stuff over in my parents' basement across town. So you just accumulate a lot of stuff through your years. So that's the deal. Anyway, all right. I need a drink. Bear with me 1 second. Be right back.
You're listening to the #1 Kansas City sports talk show.
I hope you're gearing up for all sorts of delicious food and family.
That's recorded in a garage.
Hopefully the family is, delicious, but in a different way.
You're listening to the UnkleToddCast.
So, like I say, it's a pretty crucial off season for the Chiefs. I don't know that this is a crucial season for the Royals. My thought is more just it's really about development. Still about development. I'd love for him to have an 81 win season, just because you realize you're right there, and your young guys are coming along. Hopefully you've sold some tickets and you can up your payroll a little bit, and you're in a good spot where you can hopefully maybe recruit some better free agents, which you're probably going to have to overpay for a little bit. Hopefully it's not as bad as it was prior to 2015, where you have to seriously overpay for free agents because nobody wants to come to Kansas City. So we'll hope that it's a better environment now than it has been. But that's the fun stuff. Well, like I say, I want to say it's really just a couple of us right now, according to the analytics. So my voice and my brain seem to be running out of a little bit of steam here, so we'll see how far we can get. Anywhoozle, this thing seems to be running okay. I don't really have any comments to bounce off of here, and like I say, I've run through the broad topics that I was thinking I'd plow through tonight. So, anywho, that's the big stuff. So I appreciate you guys following, liking, subscribing, all those fun things, and like I say, keep an eye out, because I'm going to try to see if I can do this at a little bit higher production value and a little bit more often. I try to challenge myself to increase the production on these a little more, but not so much that takes up more of my time than actually generating the content. So, hey Kevin, no problem, man. Thanks for tuning in. And like I say, this is an experiment, because I'm going to be on Twitter now, like with video, not just typing, but I'm actually streaming, and then on YouTube. So we'll see if I can actually get anybody interested in here, because it's more fun for me to do these when guys comment and pose questions of hey, what if the NFL did this or such and so. It's just, rather than me just talking stream of consciousness, which I guess is okay, but I can kind of run out of steam mentally sometimes. So it's but yeah, I mean, someday I may go through and tell you what all this stuff is. I don't know that it matters, but getting closer to having everything together and being able to do everything I'm hoping to do. Honestly, all the media attention this week is on the Super Bowl, and I just don't have any interest in it. I mean, I don't feel jilted. I don't feel like the Chiefs were cheated out of it, or I know a lot of people feel like the Saints were, and you can certainly make that case, but it's over. I mean, we are where we are, so there's no going back. So that's just kind of my attitude about it anyway, is my mind's already, my mind usually shifted to baseball by this time anyway, because the teams that I had any rooting interest in were typically out of it by now. but also just because I'm more of a baseball guy. That's really what drove my sporting ball fandom for years. So, pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks. The Royals have a lot of exciting young guys, and it should be a fun year. I don't see them, being the ceiling for me is a 500 team. I picked them to win 75 games, which is a step forward. It's certainly not going to be the most fun season to watch, but it'll be a 62 win team all to shreds. So, and then just keeping an eye on what's shaping up for the Chiefs. I mean it's so traditional for a new coordinator to bring in his own staff. A lot of people that I know are panicking about the defensive coaches that are leaving the Chiefs, but I'm like, guys want their own people. They want people that they trust, who they have a working relationship with, who know their system. It makes total sense to me. It doesn't panic me, and I kind of wouldn't be shocked if there's a wholesale overhaul of the roster, more because of the salary cap. I mean, the primary reason that John Dorsey is the GM of the Browns now and not the Chiefs is because of how poorly he handled the salary cap. He signed guys too late. He signed guys, too long or for too much money, or he would restructure people's contracts where they were more backloaded, and he would just sort of keep kicking the can down the road. Well, the bill would come due, at some point, and you got to the point where you didn't have the payroll flexibility to go out and do something like the Rams did, which was they went and got Ndamukong Suh, they went and got Marcus Peters, they went and got Aqib Talib, they went and got a lot of players. They went and signed, Wade Phillips as the D coordinator. They had that money. They could do that stuff. Well, no reason the Chiefs couldn't have been able to do stuff like that, except they gave a ton of money to Justin Houston a year later than they needed to, which cost them more money and locked them up for more years. Gave money to Eric Berry, which I don't know that a lot of people had a problem with at the time. I know some did, but there again, you've got, money tied up in guys who aren't giving you a lot on the field. Kevin, what's the most important offseason move for the Chiefs this year? Well, frankly, I think it's the one they've already made, which was firing Bob Sutton and getting a new D coordinator. I think this new coordinator knows how to maximize the value of the people who are already here. I think he will know how to, make the hard choices of these are the players that we keep and these are the players that we let walk. That's probably the most important offseason move, is you have to decide, because chances are you cannot have both Justin Houston and D Ford. Chances are you cannot have, D Ford and Eric Berry. Chances are you can't do a whole lot in off-season free agency because you spent $16 million on Sammy Watkins. Well, yeah, I understand that's what you mean. I'm telling you that I still think that was the biggest move because it informs the remaining moves that you have, because, Spags is going to have to make those hard choices on who you keep. So, personally, I have to wonder if they keep D Ford because of the system that you would assume if he runs the same system that he ran in his previous positions. All of a sudden D Ford, well, EB is too expensive to cut this year, but they may still have to because he's not going to play. I mean, if he gets surgery, he's not going to play. If he doesn't get surgery, he probably won't play. So you may just need to take the money hit now, because you could get him off the books with a massive cap hit this year. And then, in 2020, now all of a sudden you get that money back. So I'm not saying it's a good move. I'm not saying it's a great move, but you're not getting production from the guy on the field. The Steelers are doing the same thing. Yeah, I know Ford was a D-end in college, but he was an over D-end, and Spags runs an under and D Ford typically, doesn't set an edge. In his system, a lot of times you have to have an outside guy set the edge. So, I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying that I don't know that you can afford him. You may need to go get a guy who is a little bit more split in his availability in pass coverage or in rush defending. So I get it. It's a matter of you have to make these choices. So if you're going to make Justin Houston your guy who's going to set the edge, if he's going to be your Leo or whatever you want to term it, then, you might not be able to keep D Ford. It's just one of these things. The Steelers are thinking about doing the exact same thing with Antonio Brown. It's a matter of, it makes no sense academically. It makes no sense in the spreadsheet to take a massive cap hit and get rid of Antonio Brown. But if Antonio Brown is going to do the same thing to your team that Le'Veon Bell did this year, then it might be the right thing to do to get rid of Antonio Brown, take the massive cap hit now that you can take the big cap hit right now, and then the following year, you regroup, because chances are Antonio Brown he's either not going to give you good production on the field or he's going to ruin your locker room. So I think, looping this back around to Eric Berry, everybody's talking about what a great leader Eric Berry is. Well, how great a leader can he be from the sidelines in street clothes? And, I love Eric Berry. I want him to be around and lifting the spirits and, amping everybody up. But the fact of the matter is, it's the case of, you got to have somebody on the field. So if they're able to go out and sign Earl Thomas in the offseason from Seattle, and he's a free agent, you don't have to trade for him. If you can sign Earl Thomas, and you can keep Eric Berry around, and you can IR him, or you can IR him, designate to return, or that kind of thing. I mean, great. If you can figure it out, I'd love for Eric Berry to be here his whole career. But here's the fact of the matter, friends, and it's probably not the most fun thing to talk about, but you have 2 to 3 years of Patrick Mahomes on a rookie contract. Everything else, and I mean everything else, has to take a backseat. Everything else has to take a backseat. Whatever that means. If that means Tyreek Hill walks, if that means D Ford walks, if that means Eric Berry, walks away with a massive check, whatever that means, that has to be the focus from here out. I think Mahomes has proven that, he can do okay with okay guys. So, I want Tyreek Hill around, but not if it lowers the chances of the team's success from, 75% to 70%, because you stand a much better chance of being able to draft a guy who can give you 70% of Tyreek Hill than you can of, being able to fill in the 5% on the rest of the team that you lost by keeping him around. So, again, please don't hear me saying that you're wrong in your comments or your questions. I don't disagree with you. I'm just telling you that as fans, I think we get attached to ideas. I think we get attached to, comments that are made from people with a lot of volume and signal boost. And that's the narrative. A lot of you guys probably who were here later missed me, raging against the narrative, capital T, capital N, which is, this notion starts up. And, there was a question earlier about the rumor of a Mahomes contract. There never was a rumor about a Mahomes contract. There was talk about what it would cost when the time came to sign Mahomes. We don't know that. It could be a whole lot less. It could be a whole lot more. But the thing is, it's not a conversation right now. It's something to fill dead air time. There's no need for it. There's nothing gained from it right now. And frankly, I don't think an agent would let Mahomes sign a deal right now. because there's too much potential earning to be had in the next little while. So that's the deal there. But, we suddenly have all this air to fill, so we start talking about Mahomes being the first $200 million man. Well, another outlet picks that up and turns it into, the Chiefs will sign Mahomes for over $200 million. We don't know. It's too early to talk about it, So, anyway, that's that whole deal. Man, you know what? I'm curious here. How long have we even been at this? I haven't even looked. Not that it really makes that big a deal, but 47 minutes. Wow, that's pretty cool. So, I guess part of me, I don't think a lot in terms of, 3-4 versus 4-3, because base defense is a little bit irrelevant these days because of, all the sub packages and all the, disguises that defenses try to throw at the other team, and we'll, the cover zero thing where we'll line up 7 guys and then, some will drop back and whatever. It's this thing of you need the guys that best fit your defensive philosophy more than anything. I don't even know that you have to think in terms of formation so much as you do, okay, I have, yes, you do have to scheme up, okay, well, I'm going to have a Sam, I'm going to have a Leo, I'm going to have a nickel package that's going to be my base defense, and I'm going to drop these guys. You do have to have all those things in consideration, but really, you hope to have the good base personnel to be able to scheme up whoever's on the other side of the field, whatever is best going to get that done. So a big criticism of Bob Sutton was, he ran the 3-4 because he was trying to have a defense that was good at everything. And in today's NFL, that's next to impossible. You pretty much have to, have a system that is, on this down, we're scheming up more for the pass. We're scheming up more for the rush. We're scheming up more to flood the middle of the field. We're scheming up more to keep guys off the edges. We're scheming up more to, prevent the deep ball. There's just this thing. It's like, well, if you try to do everything okay, chances are you're going to do at least one thing not real good. So, anyway, that's the deal there. So like I say, Kevin, you may be right about, his particular 4-3. My understanding, which is limited, was that, Spagnuolo played more of an under versus Ford played an over. It might be vice versa. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. I don't think that's going to be the deciding factor. I think the deciding factor is going to be just more, Spagnuolo is going to look over his roster, and they're going to have to make some choices. I don't know how they're going to make it all work, but they're not going to be able to go, get everybody from the draft. They're not going to be able to get everybody from free agency. They're not going to be able to get everybody from, guys who were cut from other teams' practice squads and this kind of thing. It's going to be a combination of all those things. So, it's hard to say. And by the way, I don't think they're done with the offense. I think they're going to have to go out and, they'll draft a tight end, or they'll sign a tight end, probably to be more of a blocking tight end, but to be a better version of Demetrius Harris. And, they're going to have to replace Chris Conley. I really don't see them bringing him back. So you're going to have another wide receiver. Again, you can draft him. But you might be able to go get a reclamation project, a veteran that wouldn't cost you as much but is good enough. So, the salary cap numbers came out today, and the Chiefs are carrying over I want to say $800,000 from last year into this year. And center, good point. Well, aren't they going with the they played, was it Austin? Who played some snaps at center. I kind of wondered if he was more or less set up as the replacement there, but maybe not. But they had an all defensive draft and didn't get a ton of production out of it. Oh, that was another guy. It was Tano Passanio, who you would think would work better in a 4-3 system. Derek Nottie And Breland Speaks, seem to be built a little better for a 4-3. So maybe it's going to be a little easier for them to kind of stitch it all together that way. Man, it's driving me nuts. Is it Austin Leiter, I want to say? Can't remember. And you've got Garrick Dieter, and I mean, he could be the plan. So, here again, it's like you have so many draft picks, and you've got holes. So you're going to have the strategery, headed in terms of, here's where we think we're okay. Here's where we need to spend the most resources. So, that's if it's me, I'm basically looking at, I need another cornerback. I would be okay if they keep Steven Nelson. He's a good number 2, number 3. But you're going to have to draft one. And you got to figure out safety. I mean, you can't rely on Eric Berry. Even when he's healthy, he's older. I like Passanio too. I just don't think they haven't used him very well. And again, I think that's on Sutton. So hopefully, Spagnuolo has a reputation for being able to develop young guys. So hopefully, that'll be the case. Jordan Lucas needs to see way more of the field. Yeah, well, my lovely wife just tried to call me a second ago, so I probably need to answer that. Kevin, thanks, man, for being on here. It's some great thoughts. And, like I say, I'm talking off the top of my head. I could be completely off base. This is just what's in my memory bank right now. But I appreciate it. All right, I think I'm going to over and out here for now. So thank you. And we'll see when I can get back on here again. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.